Hi, welcome to the UPM Book Club. We are reading Seize the Time by Bobby Seale. And we are kicking shit off today at the section The Shit Comes Down. Free Huey. I got out of jail on December 8th, 1967. I came out with the feeling and desire to get Brother Huey P. Newton out of jail and to keep them from sending him to the gas chamber, because this was the party, and the party was my life. It was like a musician learning how to play a horn and blowing some jazz and really being good with it in such a way that it's your life. It's part of you. This is the way I always felt about the party. I don't generally go into things about the party from the way I might subjectively feel about them. I try to project them objectively. But I also came out of jail with a feeling that I had a wife and I had a little baby. My wife wanted me to go to work. I have 9 trades: musician, comedian, community organizer, carpenter, builder, draftsman, journeyman sheet metal mechanic, general machine shop work, and non-destructive testing of machine and aircraft parts. Man was a jack of all trades. Is. I have a number of trades like that, but going to work wouldn't give me enough time, I felt, to work to free Huey. Before Huey had gotten shot, I was contemplating that half my time would be taking care of my family and the rest of my time would be used to work diligently in the party. I felt that we would have to have some kind of financial support that would help back up the party. I knew that I was a good draftsman, so before Huey got shot, I made up my mind to do the kind of work that I'd need to support my family at home. I would try to get private drafting jobs that I could do at night. If I could do private drafting at home, I could make money to take care of my family, and the rest of the time, if I could be flexible and be my own boss, I could do work for the party at any time and in any way it called upon me to do so. I was only into having a family for 2 years at that time, but I really related to my family. This was my first experience of being married and having a family and having this responsibility. I never really was afraid of the responsibility, but at the same time, I knew that life and living were not really secure with all the racism and all the exploitation Black people were subjected to. After I'd been out of jail a couple days, I was riding down Grove Street with Eldridge, David Milliard, Artie, and a couple of other people. I told Eldridge that we had to do something for Huey, but said that I also felt that I had to go to work, get a half-assed job, and possibly do some drafting at home to make some money on the side, put some specific scheme together to bust out Huey. Eldridge ran it down that our real work was organizing people. Man, don't worry about doing any work, Eldridge said. We got a lot of work to do. This isn't like leaving your family. We'll take care of that altogether, but let's organize the people to free Huey. You're right, man, I said. I don't have time for a job. Before I came out of jail, I had actually known deep down inside me that we didn't have any more time to be hung up on jive jobs with all this stuff happening to us and these pigs trying to railroad Brother Huey. So we really went into motion, using every means we had, taking every speaking engagement we could, and rallied the community. The party moved rapidly to the campuses and held rallies and forums. We had funds and donations coming in. A lot of the brothers were flocking to the party. There was a lot of brothers, a lot of party members who worked doing leafleting, announcing rallies, raising money, and stuff like that. Brothers and sisters would come back and report how they went out to collect funds. Excuse me. The dust is getting to me out here today. It's been windy. They went out to collect funds on the streets of the Fillmore district. They would have buckets and cans to collect donations and funds. Some of the pimps would throw a $5 or $10 bill in, and some would drop $2 or $3 in. The pimps would say, "Is this for Huey Newton?" "Yeah, brother," the brothers and sisters would say. "You know you're making money. You got to come on and cough up some of them coins so Brother Huey can have some righteous legal defense." The brothers threw the money in. I think Huey knew 3 main pimps very well. You know, there's no really successful pimp, but there were about 10 of them who you could call successful in the Bay Area at the time. And I think Huey knew most of them. He knew most of the cats in and around the Black community. So Eldridge, David, and I were all working and figuring out different things that were necessary to be done. A couple of days later, there was a court appearance for Huey. We went there and I did a couple press interviews about how we were trying to mobilize people for the defense of Huey. And that's how we launched our campaign to free our Minister of Defense. Would anybody like to take a turn reading?
I would, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Right on. Okay. A white lawyer for a black revolutionary. Shortly after I got out of jail, I went over to San Francisco to check out Charles R. Gary, the lawyer the Central Committee had tentatively chosen to defend Huey. I had never met Gary before, and I guess to be honest, I had a little tingling, a bit of racism still hanging on to me. It wasn't that I hated white people, but I had to find out if I could trust this white lawyer to fight for Huey's freedom. Everyone had said that he was very good. He was recommended to us by Beverly Axbod. We have been considering a number of lawyers, Donald Warden, Clinton White, and a couple of others. White and Warden were both black hats, but Warden had too many guys who went to jail, some of whom we thought were on death row. The way Warden operated wasn't cool, we thought, because he could tell you one thing out of the side of his mouth and then go and do another thing behind the scenes with the police department and the people downtown. That's like 99% of all lawyers, basically. Clinton White had the reputation of being a good lawyer and a good fighter, but I was fearful that they would try to manipulate him and Huey and the party would become political football. I really don't know if he decided to take the case or if the party decided not to hire him, because when I got out of jail, Gary had already been tentatively chosen. So I went over to meet Gary. He told me about the kind of law firm he was running and why these political cases related to him. I popped up right away and asked, how much money is it going to cost? Let's not worry about that, Gary said. Let's worry about the fact that we want to free Huey. He seemed to be a very honest person, from everything I could detect about him. Well, let's see how he works out in practice, I said to myself. I generally hold back on my judgment of people until I see how they work out in practice. A couple of days later, another lawyer was being considered. We went up to see him, and right away we decided that we didn't like him because he wanted $10,000 to $12,000 in advance off the cuff. We judged that Gary's firm was a better firm and that Gary himself was a better lawyer. We looked at the man's record and the number of people he had kept off death row, the number of murder cases that he had won, and those in which he had actually proven people innocent. From all this, and because of our concern for Brother Huey, we felt it was Gary who was needed. 3 or 4 days after we made our final decision, I went to a meeting of the defense committee for Huey P. Newton, and there were less than 10 people there. I had read in the papers that there were hundreds of people on the committee. The problem was a bit of black racism, which was hanging on and which was very bad. The people who were originally on Huey's defense committee were all black people, naturally. But it turned out that they were mad because Huey's family and the Black Panther Party had decided that Charles Gary was the best legal technician available. Our argument was that we couldn't judge the man by the color of his skin. We couldn't judge a lawyer just because he was black. We would choose him on the basis of his ability, and said that if you had cancer or another bad disease, you would want the best medical technician they could find. This was our argument, but they didn't understand it. We tried to show them that you could not judge Gary by the color of his skin. We tried to show them that Gary had no reason or desire to be a tool or a puppet of the power structure. We had to remind them that Gary had been viciously attacked by cops in the past when he fought for the labor unions in San Francisco, and that a lot of corrupt people on the local power structure didn't like him. The man had integrity, we said, and his record and everything else about him were all in Huey's favor, but they still wanted to hinge it they still wanted to hinge it on the little old thing like he's not black. Someone even had the nerve to say that we should hire John George, a man who had never handled the kind who had never handled that kind of case. Those two kinds of politics developed in the black community. One on the basis of a racist line, another one on the basis of our progressive line. Later, we didn't get along with John George at all because opportunistically he sided with the hundred or so people who only wanted a quote unquote black lawyer and are trying to form a Huey P. Newton defense committee, but who didn't really have any power in the community. When it turned out that there wasn't going to be any black lawyer, most of them stopped worrying about saving Huey's life, but some worked to free Huey. So the Black Panther Party hired Gary. And when I went to this first meeting of the defense committee, there was only David Hilliard, Eldridge, and myself. Huey's brother, Melvin Newton, Sid Walton, and 3 or 4 other people who showed up. There were only about 8 or 9 people actually functioning on Huey's defense committee right after we hired Charles Gary. Eldridge and I were very pissed off at some of the people who had their little racist hang-ups. So many of them, about 60 or 70, used to crowd into meetings before I got out of jail. Eldridge told me they used to stand near the door trying to get out what they had to say, just running off at the mouth. They weren't really interested in doing any work. When we hired Gary, they all dropped away like a bunch of little scared rabbits and racists. I didn't like that at all. Some of those people had been to college and had talked about all the oppressive conditions black people were living under. The way I looked at it, their actions were tantamount to selling out the New African community. Some of the local New African lawyers and black cultural nationalists tried to attack Gary publicly. Quote, you guys have got to have a New African lawyer, they told us. We just wanted the best one we could get. Those New African lawyers had some kind of meeting in Berkeley and tried to condemn Gary. That kind of stuff even hit the newspapers. We realized that half of those lawyers were just thinking about money. They were thinking that we were going to raise a lot of funds for Huey's defense, and they wanted to get their hands on those funds and stick them in their own pockets. When we hired Gary, we didn't have any money. Gary's firm didn't get any money from us for a long time and went into the hole on Huey's case. Most of those New African lawyers who condemned Gary never would have stuck with us when we were without funds. They would have gotten rid of us. But they really had to get up off Gary's back after he got Eldridge out of Vacaville in June, and later on when his legal and political work together with our community efforts kept Huey out of gas chamber. Black racism is a fault of a few within the black community. Black racism is a very selfish thing. It's definitely not progressive or a productive thing. Very fascinating. Is that where we're stopping?
No, I was just letting Comrade Shay into the room, and now I gotta scroll.
Gotcha.
Who would like to take a turn reading the next section?
I just wanted to add that it is very interesting. It reminds me of what Frantz Fanon was talking about in Wretched of the Earth, where some African people who were struggling for liberation and self-determination were confused when they saw some of their African people who wanted to uphold white supremacy and be puppets of the state while they were colonized with people who betrayed their white privilege and wanted to fight alongside them. And Frantz Fanon talked about this, and it automatically reminded me of what he was talking about right now. And it's a pure example of it.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
like that very last part. That says enough.
That's just enough.
That says about an entire section of the African community, the ethno-fascists, especially them damn Israelites, because them damn Israelites are unhinged as hell. I'm being so freaking serious. Like they were at a I think SJP were having another Palestine demonstration a few days ago, and there were a group of so-called Black Israelites that were trying to ruffle up the protesters, and I ironically enough, it they come from a place that's right next to Palestine. So like,
Exactly.
like once again, that last section speaks about an entire group of ethno-fascists and assimilationists and integrationists in our community that are not only killing our revolutionary potential and our struggle, but also who gets the brunt of their bullshit? The children, us. So
Exactly.
once again, that last line speaks enough.
Volumes. It's these volumes. And this is what Franz Fanon was also talking about, encouraging people, everyone, to psychologically decolonize themselves and stop engaging in racialized identities, and to instead look at things through a class analysis, which I think is essential.
Right. And like this, once again, this is how you know that a lot of these people are not actually reading these books, because they actually read these books, they would not still be cultural nationalists and be operating on racial feeling, as revolutionary knowledge. And once again, this is a clear cut example of that. Just because it's a so-called Black lawyer does not mean that they have your best interest. We're talking about a lawyer and a revolutionary.
Exactly.
They don't have the same interest. It's about who can be able to struggle alongside you, to struggle alongside the people. Now, there are a few actually radical lawyers in history, especially Angela Davis. Yeah, Gary, him. There are a few radical lawyers that actually struggle alongside the people. And, once again, Black on everything does not cut it for every single thing, because you have so-called Black people that do not have the interests of African people, and you have African people that are in the best interest of the African masses here in the US and in our diaspora and back in our homeland. So once again, that last section really speaks about how, rooting for everybody Black is not the best solution for the plight of African people.
Beautifully said.
Very true. Indeed, well said. Yeah, I'm editing shit here. I just saw that I hadn't changed my name to my name. So, like Schmacko's cool, but I'm Trish.
I love this chapter. I love this chapter. It's so amazing.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Who would like to take a turn reading next?
I can take a turn.
All
right. Coalitions. 3 weeks after I got out of jail, we formed a coalition with the Peace and Freedom Party. Eldridge called me and told me to come over and meet some people who wanted to give us money to help Huey out. When I got there, he told me an organization, the Peace and Freedom Party, was trying to get on the ballot, and they wanted to know if they could come into the Black community and register people into their party. We thought about it and talked about what Huey had said. Huey thought that we should not become an official party on the ballot at that time because he knew political repression was going to come down. The Black Panther Party wasn't massive at that time and hadn't yet spread across the country. Remembering what had happened to the American Communist Party, he was afraid that the government would take every person who was registered or attempted to register as an official Black Panther Party member and tried to trump up charges on them. At the same time, we wanted to spread out a lot more and get a massive group of white people to work in their communities because Huey had always held the position that white people should work to end racism in their own community.
Damn right. We still hold to that. That is part of the White Panther Party line.
Very, very important here. Very, very important. Eldridge told me that the Peace and Freedom Party would give us money and also give us $3,000 for Huey's Defense Fund. They not only wanted to register people for the Peace and Freedom Party in the white community, they also wanted to do it in the Black community and saw us, the Black Panther Party, as representatives of the Black community. I thought that that was correct and right in line with White Mother Country Radicals, an article written by Eldridge. I decided we should form the coalition. Eldridge agreed that we should form a coalition for a specific purpose, which was an idea Huey had talked about. Later, we went to the jail and asked Huey about it, and he agreed. We had a number of rallies in the Black community in Hunters Point, the Fillmore, and West Oakland, with the Peace and Freedom Party supplying sound and technical equipment, which the Black Panther Party did not at the time have at all. With the $3,000, we were able to pay a fair retainer to Charles R. Gary for Huey's defense. In the white community, as well as the Black, we initiated a broad campaign for increased concern about the problems of the Black community, centered around our leader and Minister of Defense, Brother Huey P. Newton. There were members of the Peace and Freedom Party, and they always said they represented the Black community in the Peace and Freedom Party. We will look at them and say, what do you mean? Huey P. Newton represents the Black community. It got to be a hassle, and they would sometimes ask us what we thought they should do. We would say that they should join the Black Panther Party. We looked upon the Peace and Freedom Party as a predominantly white organization for the white community. At the same time, we saw that it was valuable to form a coalition for the specific purpose of encouraging Black people to register in the Peace and Freedom Party instead of the Republican or Democratic parties who were oppressing us. With this understanding, we formed the coalition and later announced that we would run Brother Huey P. Newton for Congress from the 7th Congressional District and myself for the Assembly from the 17th Assembly District, districts that were half white and half Black. There were attempts by the power structure to limit the party's activity with this coalition. We had a lot of clashes with a lot of different groups of people, but there were thousands of Black people coming into the Black Panther Party because of what was happening. The coalition was a working coalition, not just a verbal one. There was some very good work done in the community. When the university students were being viciously attacked by the Berkeley police, the students understood that the people in the Black community were being attacked, murdered, and brutalized all the time. The Peace and Freedom Party came to the realization that we had to do something about the police on a political level. The Black Panther Party agreed, and they asked us what we thought should be done. Eldridge talked to Bob Avakian, Rick Highland, and quite a number of others about the concept of community-controlled police. We began to work jointly on this with members of the Peace and Freedom Party because it would not only be community control of the police in the Black community, it will also be community control in the white community. It was at this time that I began to think that some members of the Peace and Freedom Party weren't really concerned with Brother Huey P. Newton as a political prisoner who needed to be free. Many people worked on our campaign and showed concern, but some of them just weren't interested. Some of the leaders looked at it as a political lever or something to use, but others were earnest and really wanted to free Huey. It became apparent that many Peace and Freedom Party members would have to become more radical and more revolutionary. Many people did not understand that the very police who attempted to kill Huey were controlled by the Democratic and Republican parties, so they weren't really very concerned with community control of the police. They didn't understand that Huey's situation was inseparable from the needs of the community. We also saw that they didn't have a real interest in the community control of the police. We weren't in good communication about it. So we just naturally worked on our own with the petition. This didn't make us against coalitions. It mostly placed us against people who allow themselves to stagnate, who think they don't have an issue when there's a lot of hard work to be done. There were some 25,000 votes cast for Huey P. Newton for Congress in the 7th Congressional District. For the people who still thought like the old politicians, if a candidate lost, it was over. Some of the leaders felt that running Huey was a losing tactic, but that was not the case. They misunderstood how much Huey was interlocked with every Black man in the Black community who suffers from oppression. We'd run Huey again because ours is a revolutionary struggle. They acted like social democrats and were not able to advance to a higher level and continue working. The coalition began to split up. I still believe that if the Peace and Freedom Party would really rally its people together, then membership alone could place the community control of the police issue on the ballot, but they wouldn't push for it. We will continue to have working alliances with other groups like Los Cientes de la Raza, a group supporting the 7 Latino brothers who are accused of killing a cop in San Francisco. Alliances with groups like Los Siete have worked out a lot better than coalitions with white liberals because the brown American people are suffering from the same things Black American people are. The Young Lords, a Puerto Rican gang that turned political, works in alliance with the Black Panther Party in Chicago and New York. They're suffering the same oppression conditions that Black people are subjected to. There's also the Young Patriots who are vanguard in the poor Black communities. We can relate well with them because they are in opposition to the power structure's oppression. Alliances between poor oppressed peoples work out readily. It is the poor oppressed people who have to dictate their political desires and needs and explain what should be done and what should not be done. The organizations of the lumpen proletariat are the ones we can relate to. We even have a problem with Black students sometimes because they tend to have a detached understanding of the realities in the Black community. This is also true. A lot of people don't understand that when we make coalitions, we're not trying to shuck people. We have no time to be shucking and jiving. When we get 3 or 4 brothers shot up and killed, we can't say that it was bad and forget about it because we know the pigs are coming back tomorrow. They'll try to attack us again. We know that because of our historical experience as Black people. We are not against intelligence. The party is very intelligent, and we read the same materials that the college students have read. But it's different when cats like Huey P. Newton and Eldridge Cleaver write and talk because it is coming out of a lot of experience. It comes from the guts of their souls.
This section is really important because right here we're seeing the roots being, nurtured and starting to grow for the first Rainbow Coalition.
Yep.
It's fucking beautiful. Excuse me. Comrade Joe, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was taking from this past reading. There's like the basic understandings of oppressed peoples of different ethnic, backgrounds and communities facing the same oppressors and wanting to do something about it. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then they mentioned the Los Siete de la Raza, the ones that I believe they were acquitted after it was all said and done with, but I know they were being political prisoners also. So I was glad that they mentioned that. And then one other thing. I think one of the things was talking about famous lawyers or famous attorneys. And I was going to ask Comrade Shea, when that movie you shared with me about Attica, there was a famous lawyer. I think his last name is Koch.
William Consular.
Yeah. Do you
Bill Consular.
Oh, okay. Because I know he had represented Leonard Peltier back in the days.
Yeah, he also represented Bobby Seale and a few others.
Oh, and
Yeah,
I
he
believe
did.
He's still alive. I think he's in
No,
his
he's
nineties.
dead. He passed away a few years ago. Passed
Oh,
away about 3 years ago.
oh, okay, because that's about the last, because he came on this book study group I was on. They got him to speak on there, and but it was probably a few years ago. That's why I thought he was still around.
But there
Okay,
was a few others also. There was Danny Myers and
Danny
and Danny Myers, Bob Cantor. You know, I know a whole lot of lawyers that were radicals and were in favor of the young laws and doing work with the Panthers, etc. You
Yeah.
know, they were, I mean, down to earth, man, down to earth.
and that's pretty much all I had to say.
Let me
Thank you.
let me say something in reference to something that really burns me. I don't adhere under no circumstances to working within the establishment. You know, I don't believe that there is any possibility that regardless of how much you run within the politics of the system, you're gonna win. There's no such thing. That's a fallacy. That's a dream that will never come true.
Yep.
You know.
There-
So when it comes to the Panthers doing that kind of shit, that's what gets me. You know, because here we are, revolutionaries. You know, talking about, man, communism and talking about socialism and talk about a new society, and here we are at the same time running within the system, man, trying to believe or trying to think that there's a possibility that we could change some parts of it. That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous because there's no way to introduce socialism and communism to the same settler state empire that was built off the genocide of the native people of Abya Yala, off the Holocaust of indigenous Africans, off the indentured servitude of indigenous Irish Gaelics, of Filipinos, and other oppressed people. You cannot do that. You cannot do that. You cannot do that because the same people that you're trying to embrace, you know, this foundational Black American shit that some of these ethno-fascists got going on, because they don't want to face reality. They don't want to face the reality that no matter how loyal you are to the same empire that your ancestors built, being kidnapped from their homeland, being kidnapped of their culture, of their history, will kill you the next day. There is no changing this settler empire from the top down. Kwame Ture warned us about this, and we're about to read him now because, I mean, he's a part of BPP history and was there for a short while, and still, we need to listen to these people, because if you think that we can be able to change a genocidal imperialist empire from the top down, you are so mistaken. You are so mistaken, because, I mean, who gets the brunt of it? The African children, Chicano children, Boricua children, Chinese children. Really? You really think that that's going to work? No, it's not. It needs to go completely. I don't care what no one says. It needs to go completely out of existence. Not just the US, but Canada, Mexico, Brazil, the bourgeois Chinese government, Russia, because imperialism is imperialism. You cannot change it from the top down. I don't care how many people you lifted out of poverty. If you're truly socialist, there would not be an imperialist faction still going on. There would be no middle class existing. There would still be no millionaires and billionaires, period. So no, you cannot change imperialism from the top down. You can't. And that's the truth.
And that's the thing is, at that point in time, this was one of the first times that it was even a possibility for anybody who had pigment to run for any fucking office. So they didn't have any hindsight to go on of going, well, this is a failed tactic. We have that privilege now of being able to look back on things and go, well, we can see what they tried. We can see what worked and what didn't fucking work. And this is an example of what didn't fucking work that at the time might have sounded like a good idea of let's at least get some Black folks from the revolutionary community into offices to try to change things from the inside out. But
And
what happened there is what actually shows us that you can't fucking change this system from the inside out, and why reformism is fucking, politically impotent. It is useless and futile.
it bombed.
Yeah, revolution is the only answer when you can see already that the system ain't gonna let nobody in that isn't an establishment pick that will suck
Exactly.
the corporate cock. And we don't suck the corporate cock, so it ain't gonna let us in. Yeah, comment, Shay? I see you got your hand up there. What's up, Shay?
Yeah, I just want to say, you know who actually, man, brought the Vietnam War to an end? It wasn't the students. It was mass students that wasn't political, tired of a lot of bullshit, and they got involved in the struggle, and they became radicals in the process. They became very radical, but it wasn't the students of democratic society and all that. They wasn't nothing. They didn't contribute as much as these people who didn't give a fuck, and got involved. And they're the ones who brought the Vietnam War to an end. And I said brought it to an end because the Vietnam War, man, the Vietnamese was the ones who kicked their ass and drove them out. So it was because of these students who wasn't radical at the beginning. They wasn't radicals. And a lot of people don't know this. They say, oh man, the students, the radical students. They wasn't radicals at first. They were students that just hanged around in the college's campus and didn't give a fuck about all the shit that was happening. And they got involved and they organized themselves into what they became.
Absolutely.
So, again, like the 70s was a period in time where a lot of people were believing that there was a revolution was going to happen within minutes. Everybody was prepared, including myself. I was in prison. I was prepared. But I was struggling in prison. I was a Panther. In the 70s and 80s, I was a Panther. Mid 80s is when I became, well, in 69 is when I went to Attica. But 69 and 70s, I was a Panther, and we were kicking ass, man. We was constantly, continuously going to segregation for bullshit. So we were struggling also in prison. We wanted the Vietnam War to win.
It's kind of funny how that worked out too. That the entire might of the U.S. fucking military wasn't shit up against some Vietnamese farmers.
Yeah.
Like, they fucked everybody up with little hidey holes and shit. It was great.
Yeah. And guess what? The U.S. lost. The U.S. lost that war. Okay, no matter how many times they were trying to rape whoever, whatever, how many Vietnamese people in the villages they were trying to do, they lost.
They lost
Again.
You know why? Because the Vietnamese people actually united against them. Like, okay, we have common cause. Let's stop this imperial fucking force trying to blast its way
Yeah.
through.
They ran this imperialist empire out, as they should, because it was a war over nothing.
Actually, it was an attempt to steal their rubber. Because
Of
you know
course,
how, you know,
course.
the US loves its wars that are for capitalism, you know.
Oh yeah,
That was one of the first that was specifically to try to steal some resources, and in that case, it was
steel
rubber.
rubber and steel rubber. I wonder what this reminds me of. Oh yeah, King Leopold.
Yeah.
Coming into my homeland of Congo and killing 15 million of us for our rubber. Does this not sound familiar to you guys? Because I'm pretty sure this is still happening. I'm pretty sure there's still a Holocaust in the Congo, right? Because there is. So, like, these struggles are interlinked with each other. That's why we say you cannot change these systems from the top down. Because if it actually worked, then why the hell are 8,500 Palestinians dead now?
Thank you.
Why?
Yeah. The fact that we have a handful of people in Congress who are of Arabic descent sure didn't help save anybody there, because no matter how much they are going, wait a fucking minute, we are talking about human beings here. The rest of Congress is ignoring them like,
Yeah.
the rest of Congress doesn't fucking care.
I mean, every single person voted against young people, the same young people that they proclaim are the future, for protesting in support of so-called terrorists that can't even go a certain distance on their land. Really?
Yeah. And they're trying to say, oh, well, this was anti-Semitic in, you know, there's a fuck ton of Jewish kids who were in that protest screaming, not in our fucking name. You are trying to pretend like you are committing this genocide in our fucking name, and we don't stand for it. Fuck that, free Palestine. And so the US arrested a bunch of Jewish kids for speaking up and going, no, this is not okay.
Kids, the future. You're arresting the future.
Well, yeah, because they want a different future than what the system wants.
Yeah, did y'all forget about the anti-drug campaigns in the Reagan era? I thought y'all cared about them, but clearly you didn't, because you put crack in our communities and almost killed every kid off.
Right. Yeah, this government doesn't give a fuck about anything but its own fucking desires and concerns, and they have nothing to do with the benefit of the people.
Yeah, once again, I'm 19 years old. I do not play that. I'm not falling for that. We're not falling for whatever they try to do. We're not falling for that no more. They tried it 3 years ago. Let it go. We're not falling for that no more. Okay?
Right.
We're not.
Indeed. Comrade Shay, go ahead.
Does anybody remember just recently, within the last few years, I think it was, where there was a coup d'etat, a coup that happened in Peru, and Pedro Castillo, that was the president, he was arrested and put in jail. Anybody remember that?
Vaguely.
Well, the reason why that happened was because, first of all, Peru has a lot of natural resources, and one of them is zinc, lead, iron, and natural gas, as well as gold. You know, and the United States have always tried to dominate South America, you know, and claim that it's our next door neighbor, you know, which means our neighbor, meaning this is mine. That's what they actually meant, you know. And Peru is rich in natural resources, just as well as other islands in South America are rich in resources. That's why the United States has the Monroe Doctrine in place so that it could keep everybody out of South America, and they in the process as colonizers they go in and make deals, you know, with puppet governments and take over the natural resources. So that's the reason why there was that thing. I mean, like, just remember, just like Chile, you know, in Chile, where they overthrew Allende. Allende was about to nationalize some of the natural resources of the country, and the United States stepped in with the CIA, and they killed them. They bombed them. Really, that's what they did.
Yep. That's how the U.S. responds to anybody that they see as any
So
kind
that's
of
the same.
threat to their
That's the same thing that happened in Vietnam. The same thing. They tried to go in there and try to take the natural resources of the Vietnamese, and the Vietnamese said, "No way, you ain't. No way, Jose, you ain't coming in here. We're not allowing it." You know, and yes, there's a lot of people that died. You know, a lot of Vietnamese that died, but so was Americans that died as well. And as a matter of fact, a lot of Americans, and I give them credit. I give them credit, and I classify them as men. They left. They refused to even go to Vietnam. They went to Canada. You know, to they went to Canada. They didn't want to go to Vietnam, and I respect those people that did that. I mean, I respect the people that had to go, but you didn't have to really go to Vietnam. You didn't have to. You could have easily.
Yeah,
You know,
back then
that's
it was
the
a lot easier to just cross the border and be like, deuces, motherfuckers. Anymore, though, they've made it so fucking hard to go into Canada or Mexico that, you know, it's not such an easy task to escape shit like that if they were to try to
yeah,
reinstill the draft. But back
yeah.
then,
One, one,
yeah, you
one of
could.
the Attica brothers, one of the Attica brothers, his name was Richard. He just passed away just recently. You know, he was in Vietnam, and he told me that he was in the jungle. You know, and all of a sudden he ran into a Vietnamese. You know, the Vietnamese told him, he said, "Listen, this is not your war. We're not fighting black people. You know, you need to leave." And the brother said, "Yeah, I'm not gonna kill you either." And they did shit. They went different ways. That made me laugh.
Right?
He said, "I ran into a Vietnamese that said that, black man, you don't need to be here."
Damn.
Oh God.
Probably one of the most positive
Yeah,
interactions to happen during that war.
the most positive thing. But there was a lot of things that happened in that war that also that were positive, you know.
Right.
So getting back to the Black Panthers, you know, I mean, I have a lot of high respect for the Black Panthers, etc., man. But there's some things that I just don't agree with.
Right.
Don't agree with.
There's a lot of things that us modern day Panthers don't agree with too. We look at those things as lessons to learn from, of being able to observe what happened in history and pull forward those lessons of the things that did work that we can apply in modern context, and the things
Yeah.
that didn't work that we can chuck it in the fuck it bucket because it got nobody nowhere back then. It's not going to get anybody anywhere today.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why we have this stance on reformism that we do, because we've seen for that many more decades now that reformism doesn't fix shit. It's a cha-cha going back and forth, because even if you do manage to change some laws that benefit the people, well, guess what? The next fucking administration is going to have the privilege to walk them the fuck back. So it's
That's
fucking
right.
pointless. It's
That's
absolutely fucking pointless.
That's right. I mean,
Um,
just like a lot of people, I mean, they were saying, oh, Obama, oh, we got a good president. The first thing he did was bomb Libya. He
Yeah.
bombed it and killed Gaddafi. He killed him. So anybody who tells me that they respect Obama, I would tell you, I would like to see him. I would like to see him personally, and I will spit in their face for being so stupid.
Obama's a fucking Uncle Tom. He works for the white supremacist structure.
He was an enemy. He was an
pushing
enemy.
its fucking its agenda. You know, he wasn't in there to do anything to help uplift anybody who has dealt with oppression.
He was
And
never
we
for
have
black
this
people.
shit.
He was never for black people.
Oh, and it sucks. I'm looking at the clock though, and I know Joe's got to take off in about 10-15 minutes. So Comrade Joe, would you like to read the next section?
And it's kind of hard because I'm in a car now. So if I hopefully I can read next time. But if somebody could take over on this, I think that's probably the last one for today.
Okay,
Please, thank you.
I mean, I'll read it.
please and thank you, Comrade Shea. I appreciate it.
Okay, Stokey comes to Oakland. Oh, that's my man now. We talking about my man now. Early in January of 1968, we decided to have a huge rally in Oakland in support of Brother Huey's freedom. We knew that a rally for Huey would fill the Oakland auditorium, and we went about securing it. The auditorium is owned by the city of Oakland, and they said they couldn't rent it out to us because they didn't want black power advocates coming to Oakland to cause riots. And that a kick in the ass. Oh God. We went back down there with a lawyer, and he told the auditorium manager that he should rent the place to us for any day he had open. Well, I can't give it to them, he said. If you don't give it to them, our lawyer told him, we'll get a court injunction on you for violating the right of people to be able to assemble in the auditorium. Now there must be some date open, so you better just cough up a date. He decided to cough up the dates, so he arbitrarily said, well, the only day we have open is next month sometimes, February 17th. Eldridge quickly said, we'll take that date, any date. When we came out of the auditorium, Eldridge ran back across the street to the county jail where Huey was being held, and told him we were going to have a big rally for him and his freedom, that we were going to pack the Oakland auditorium. The rally is going to be on February 17th, Eldridge said. Huey looked up at him and said, hey, that's my birthday. Eldridge had no idea Huey's birthday was February. So right up there in the county jail is when Eldridge got the beautiful political idea that it should be a birthday rally for Huey, a birthday rally for the freedom of our Minister of Defense. Good. Sounds good. I wasn't allowed to go into the jail to visit Huey. They have some kind of job rule and that after you get out of the county jail, you can't go back in to visit someone else. I didn't go up that time with Eldridge, but a number of times after that, I disguised myself and went up and saw Brother Huey. They had a little booth up there where you're supposed to identify yourself. But sometimes when you came up in the elevator, when I came up in the elevator, there were so many visitors and supporters of Huey that the brothers just shipped me sideways away from the booth. And I went in and visited Huey. I didn't think it's illegal, but they have this job rule. If they want to prosecute me on it now, let them try. Others came out of the courthouse, out of the courthouse. The holding section of the Alameda County Jail is on the top floor of the Alameda County Courthouse, and ran it down to me about how we were going to have a birthday party for Huey. We only had about a month before the rally. We went down to the Peace and Freedom Party and told them that we needed some money because we wanted to see Stokely Carmichael in Washington, D.C. Stokely had just come back from his world tour of Vietnam, Cuba, Africa, and other places. We felt that Eldridge and I should go direct to Washington, D.C. and sit down and talk to him and run it down to him because he really hadn't committed himself to coming to the rally yet. Although we told him about it. We asked the cats in the Peace and Freedom Party to finance that trip for us. They financed it, but not before we went to a few changes. We when we first asked them, they said they didn't have any money. Eldridge and I told them that they were a bunch of liars. How can you tell us that you don't have any money? We asked them, if you don't have it, you can raise it. We said, we need 500 in plane fare and 100 in expense to go and see Stokely so we can secure this whole rally. So they said, well, we can get about 200, but we can't get any more. Well, you damn liars, we said. You cats are talking about working with us in coalition, and you want to go into the black community and want us to be key spokesmen there for the Peace and Freedom Party. But at the same time, we are talking about huge freedom. The reason we entered into this coalition was to talk about huge freedom. That's what this rally is all about. Politically educating the masses of people that Huey Newton must be set free now. Are you cats going to be racist and jiving around and go back on your word? Or are you going to be able to go out and hustle that money? We don't have much time because we want to start getting some other things together. And we want to raise some money, more money, to print our posters. Then I got mad and I told them I didn't want to talk to them. Don't talk to me, I said. Eldridge would do all this. Eldridge would do this all the time. He would get mad and cuss them all out and say the hell with them sometimes. Later on, I didn't do that. Later on, I didn't do that. But at the time, I was overly concerned with Brother Huey, and I didn't want to be driving around with everybody that was going to be bullshitting. We knew they had enough money to help us out. We were so concerned about Huey and the organization and black people that we felt that we had to use these tactics to make those cats see that it was important. Elders came back out of the office and sat in the car. Then they went back inside the office and got $500 and brought it out. I said, no, no, no. We can't make it with, we can make it with this, Elders said. We haven't got any expense money, I said. We can get some. And they're going to have coalition with us. I said, then they could get the other 100. I'll be they got with them. So Mike Parker and some other cats raised that extra 100 in 30 minutes. That night, Eldridge and I got on the plane and split. When we got to Washington, we rented a car to get around with. We drove to this address we had for Stokely. And when we got there, we went up and knocked on the door. It was kind of early in the morning, about 8 a.m. But when we knocked on it, the guy who answered it was uptight. The FBI and the CIA had been trailing Stokey consistently. But the cat looked at us and he had to know that we weren't FBI or CIA agents. I just told him we came from the Black Panther Party. So they said, Stokey's sleeping now. Come back later on. Well, wait a minute, we said. We come to sit down and talk. Well, you had to go to someplace else home. You have to go somewhere, somebody else's house. The cat said. He wrote something on a piece of paper and said, go to this address. Now that kind of shit is this. What kind of shit is this? We thought these cats are crazy. These cats lack understanding, placing their egos before the struggle. But we decided to go to the other address. When we got there, these cats were a little bit more hospitable. About 2 hours later, we went back to talk to Stokey. We talked a little while about different things, about going around the world, asking about Cuba, things like that. We went on for a while. We tried to relax, had some coffee, and then somebody brought in half of a gallon of wine. Woof, and we righteously relaxed. After that, we got into the care we had rented, to talk to Stokey about what we really wanted. His coming out to Oakland for the big rally. We let Stokey drive. He drove his he drives like he's crazy. We looked back and noticed that some cops were trailing us. They looked like FBI agents. Man, look at those cops trailing us, I said. Don't worry about it, Stokey said. They trail me like that all the time. But they're not even hiding themselves. Well, they know that I know that they following me, and they don't care if I know or don't know that they're going to follow me. You mean they're right there on your bumper all the time, and if you speed up, they speed up, and if you slow down, they slow down. If you turn a corner, they turn the same damn corner. That's the way they do it, Stokey said. Meanwhile, he's driving real crazy. I told Stokey that we didn't allow any cops to be following us around like that. Just leave them alone, he said. Then we took off and just started driving wildly, speeding down the streets and everything. He eventually lost the cats and let them out of the sight. He'll drive all the way up the street and stop. About 4 minutes later, the same cops would come up after us in the same car. Then Stokey would turn around and drive back down the street. As he drove back down the street, the cops would see him coming that way. They would turn into the driveway and back up and back out and have their car sitting in the same direction that Stokey was going. We would pass them and they would get right back on our trail again. They were never more than 30 feet away from them. They followed Stokey around wherever we went, 24 hours a day. Another time, Stokey cut and completely lost them. We waited 10 minutes, then they drove up behind us. We got a beeper in the car, Stokey said. What do you mean a beeper? I talked. They put a beeper on this car already. That's what I was trying to find out. He said, you all just got this car and they check you out when you come to see me. While you were upstairs, they put a beeper on the car, some kind of radar type beeper that can find this car whenever it is. They already put it on and I can find you guys whenever you are. That's how they keep up with my car. We got cut again and lost them. We lost them for a number of blocks, but they almost caught up with us. Then Stokey went into a park and wound up and won his way up road. It's not a big hill, but got a good slope on it. You got to go up the road and make a complete circle and come back into itself. Stokey sped up speed up this road and made a complete circle. Then the road came right back into itself. So here was Stokey borrowing down this very narrow mile road coming down right back down on the cops. They saw him coming so fast, they just swept off the road and let Stokey go by. Stokey cut Stokey cut out while they were hustling to turn around and get the car off the third and back into the road so they could continue following him. Stokey drove to another part of the park almost a mile away. We just sat there in the parking lot and watched them from a distance wind their way around us. We turned ready on to try to drown out the buggy out of the car, and that might have taken place. We talked about the fact that we wanted Stokey to come out to Oakland and speak, and that we probably will have to have 5 to 6,000 people there. Stokey agreed to speak, and we wound up meeting with him. Eldridge and I went down to Snake Orchard later that night. We talked to a lot of different organizations. They had heard about our coalition with the Peace and Freedom Party. Why do you trust white people? Some SNCC members and cats from Black Nationalist Organization wanted to know. We don't trust white people in the sense that you're talking about. We said we judge everybody by what they do. They talk to us. Why did we? They asked us why didn't we get a black lawyer for Huey? We told them it wasn't necessarily true that if Huey had a black lawyer, he would automatically be well defended and not become a political football to kick around. We told them that we really went forth to secure legal defense for Huey, and that the Coalition for the Peace and Freedom Party was not something based on just trusting white people just because they were white. They should at least respect the fact that at some point, at some time, there was a John Brown, and that the John Browns had done a lot more than some black college intellectuals had ever done. We respected John Brown for that, we said, but we live in the spirit of Nat Turner, Patrice Lumumba, and Malcolm X, and Malcolm denounced every kind of racism in his last days. They were able to understand this. They have basic psychological block because, as Fanon put it, their intellectual possession was still in pawn in the main system. A lot of cats down there were college students. They couldn't see it when we told them that a lot of their ideas were black racist, and that we couldn't operate in a black racist thing. They couldn't see it because they were trying to say that there was no such thing as black racism. And we were trying to show them that we could very easily be such thing as black racism. Black racism is not over in most people in black communities. But it's the same. But it is the way a lot of these cats in colleges think. They think about their own selves being free, and they think with the same racism that a lot of white people project on them. And you're not going to end racism by perpetrating more racism. We also told them that ours was a working coalition. We get white people to work on the white community against racism, to destroy it and ultimately to get rid of it there. Our aim, we said, was to educate the masses of people to understand that they had to get rid of the system that exploited us, get rid of the oppression and create some real government. Well, all in all, the cats there, the SNCC people and the others didn't accept what we were saying. There were also a rally planned in Los Angeles on the day following ours. Ron Karenga of the United States organization has sent 2 of his broad-headed black racists to Washington because she had found out some kind of way that we were going to see Stokey. We flew them in that evening. Those cats were trying to get Stokey to see to it that Ron Carengo would get to speak at our rally. Stokey was going to be on the forum with them in Los Angeles. The next day, we didn't object to it. We didn't even want to get argued about it. We said we could check it out when we get back to Oakland. The next day, we talked to Stokey again and secured everything. We agreed up on when he would be out, when he would receive traveling expense and who was coming with him. We were aware that Stokey and Jane Foreman weren't getting along at all at that time. There had been a dispute of some kind because Stokey traveled out of the country without the approval of the Consent Committee of SNCC. But even with Stokey at a rally, we still wanted a working alliance with SNCC so as to better unite Black organizations around the country. We felt that they should come forth in the working alliance to further the defense of Huey and lay broad foundations of unified organizations across the country. We proposed this against the argument that they didn't want to work with the white people. We reminded Stokey that he himself set in motion the idea of white people working in the white community when he spoke at Berkeley about a year before this. The Black Panther Party had adopted the idea and saw it as something that was opposition to all forms of racism. Huey and I respected it and used it. Now Stokey was saying, down with white people. Down with white people. He told us that many people around Washington, D.C. didn't want him to speak in Oakland and because there were going to be white people on the platform. We told Stokey that there was going to be a Peace and Freedom Party member speaking from the platform, and we thought it was necessary that he speak. The platform, the person from Peace and Freedom was going to set forth the understanding what white people have to do in the end and to end racism in the white community, which is something Black people have to understand. Stokey definitely agreed to come. We drove around for the rest of the day and talked in the car. The next day we left Stokey at SNCC's office, cut out to the airport, and flew back to Oakland. We told the Peace and Freedom Party that everything was set up and that we were going to have a major rally. We knew that Stokey would definitely speak, so we could put things in motion. We politicized the event in the Black community, and they did the same thing in the white community. We brought Stokey out a little early to Huey. There was a lot of press coverage, and a lot of people realized that it was time to come out for Huey P. Newton. It was just the biggest rally that ever took place in Oakland. Besides Stokey, Rap Brown and James Foreman of SNCC showed up. It had become clear to Stokey, to James Foreman, and to Rap Brown and a lot of other people that Brother Huey P. Newton, Minister of Defense of the Black Panther Party, had become the central leader of the revolutionary movement that was coming out of the Black community on a new and higher level than it had ever been before. The place was packed. Stokey, Eldridge, and I will hardly get into the Oakland auditorium ourselves. When we first announced the rally, we said that we didn't want any cops in and around the auditorium. We said that we would take care of all the traffic directions ourselves and that we had enough Panther members to do this. We said that the community would support us in this. A few days before the rally, Chief Kane of the Oakland Police Department called up the party. Eldridge and Emory Douglas went up to talk to some of his lieutenants and captains. Eldridge told them flat that we didn't want any cops in the premise and that we would take care of the whole thing. The cops tried to shake hands with Eldridge, but Eldridge told her, I don't want to shake hands with you. I'm just going, letting you know that we don't need any cops around the auditorium. And there were none, not a pig in sight. And naturally, there was no rioting. It was Stokey's first speaking engagement since he returned from his world tour. It was very important because it linked up SNCC with the Black Panther Party. Although many people in SNCC were in disagreement with Stokey about that time. We had met with James performing in Los Angeles about a week before we came back from Washington. We had talked about his working with the party, and we told him that we wanted that kind of alliance. But Foreman was definitely against making Stokely Carmichael the honorary prime minister of the Black Panther Party. He thought we would make Rap Brown the honorary prime minister. When we saw then that there was a fractional difference inside of SNCC. There was Rap Brown running on one end with James Foreman directing things and Stokey on the other, directing his own thing. We decided that if they all accepted the 10-point platform and program, we'll make Stokely Carmichael the honorary prime minister, James Foreman the minister of foreign affairs, and Brother Rap Brown the minister of justice of the Black Panther Party. Sound good? We thought that would give us a good ground of Black revolutionary leaders to unify the Black liberation struggle across the country. So we had SNCC Prime Panther Alliance. The alliance was supposed to be practical and functional. They wholly accepted being some kind of officers of the Black Panther Party, which indicated that they saw the Black Panther Party as a revolutionary organization with a lot of Black people while sitting up and taking notice of with regards to our political line and our stand on the right to self-defense. We felt that these brothers should work with the party. We were attracting thousands of young brothers off the streets, cats who in the past had been in riots and what have you. We were also getting people from other organizations who were dumping their old groups and coming to check out the Panther Party, except for the hooligans who were deadly afraid of cops and weren't about to mess with them whatsoever. James Foreman was going to be the head of the most profound and necessary political organization program. He has spent a lot of time with me and Eldridge while we were down in Los Angeles. We asked Foreman to come to Oakland too, and he said he'll definitely be there. Foreman was playing politics though, and his strategy was to try to keep the Panthers weak. Stokey at the same time was only a field marshal in the Black Panther Party. We had drafted him as a field marshal 7 or 8 months before, and he accepted the draft. Foreman told us that we thought we should make Rap Brown minister instead of Stokey. So what we wound up doing was to try to bring them all into the party. This was going to be the basis of the alliance, a working alliance, where united we would work together for the liberation struggle. They accepted this idea. At the rally, Eldridge announced that we were making Stokey Carmichael Prime Minister, James Foreman Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Rap Brown Minister of Justice of the Black Panther Party. Foreman and Brother Rap Brown were also the heads of SNCC at the time, and we respected them as that. Everyone turned out. There was a huge crowd at the rally. Rap Brown showed up by surprise. Nobody actually knew he was coming until the last minute. James Foreman set up that for to stay snake. The rally came. The rally came off. The rally came off. It came off real good, as Eldridge put it. It was the biggest lineup of revolutionary leaders that had ever come together under one roof in the history of America. That was just about the truth, because Eldridge and myself, Apprentice, Blanchie Carter, David Milliot, Stokey, Foreman, and Rat Brown were all there. We sat huge chair in the center, the weaker chair that many people have seen in the picture, where he's holding the spear and shotgun and the shield, electrifying the right to self-defense. This in itself made a big impact, a very big impact. We raised some $10,000 at that rally for Hugh's Defense Fund. It was the biggest fundraising operation in Hugh's behalf that had ever happened, ever done down. At that time, it was the largest we ever had. We really needed the money because Gary was a lawyer, right? Gary, whose firm was working on Hugh's case almost on or around the clock basis. They must have been in the hole for 30,000 on us by then. After Stokey spoke at our rally, and we had numerous speaking engagements throughout the San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area, down in Los Angeles, and all California. The last speaking engagement we had was on Saturday night on Palo Alto. That night, the Berkeley police raided my house and arrested me. Somebody else read, please.
That's the last section for today, so I'm actually gonna stop the screen share and
Oh,
then
we stopping there?
wrap up the discussion. Yeah, we're at about an hour and a half right now, and so we got some time to do discussion on this last section, and then we'll wrap things up.
Okay, but who wants to start?
Floor's open. It's only the three of us. Take your pick. Poor Shay
Okay.
might need to wet his whistle after reading all that.
I mean, I can definitely say this is once again another clear-cut example of cultural nationalism and working from the top down going terribly wrong, because we've seen the consequences of what we try to do when we do go the cultural nationalist ethno-fascist route, or try to work from the top down and thinking that we're making something happen, which is a complete mistake, because it has led us to this mess today now that we are all in right now. Especially the last portion of the first chapter that we read today, like once again, like I said, it speaks very, very clear about the presence of so-called Black ethno-fascism in the African community here, where you have these assimilationist, integrationist factions of African people that are working in the interest of the oppressor and turning back the clock, even though they're not billionaires, they're not Bill Gates or Apple Incorporated, Google, Kellogg's, and other corporations, but they still act in the support of their oppressor, of our oppressor. And especially with Eldridge and Kwame, or at the time Stokely, definitely a lot of hot-headedness in regards to this, because a lot of cultural nationalists back then were out there, and so it's kind of like you have the vanguard versus the cultural ethno-fascists, because that's literally what it is, cultural ethno-fascism. And so, you know, you have these two different peoples that are for the people, and you have another faction that is seemingly for the people, but are in the interest of continuing on oppression against African people. So, you know, it's kind of like that dividing line that we still have, especially, you know, with the migrant crisis here in Chicago and in LA, on the imaginary southern border that separates 50 different Native Chicano groups from each other, in NYC and other places. And so, you know, once again, this is just another cautionary tale of like, you cannot rely on culture alone as revolutionary knowledge, because that's just racial feeling BS, and I'm not down with that. And also, working from the top down is only going to put your people in a more vulnerable position than they were previously. Because, I mean, especially with the Black petty bourgeoisie, you know, like us putting our trust time and time again with these people, even though they have oppressed us, even though they have played a role in the crack crisis, in the gun violence in our communities, and, you know, the warfare against African babies, African youth, African children. And every single time we're disappointed. And, you know, 5 months after, you know, our seemingly more progressive mayor, Black mayor comes in, immediately it goes back to turning back the clock. And now we're at a point where we've just had enough. We don't want to keep living like this. We don't want to keep being oppressed. We don't want to keep having to be one paycheck away from being homeless and, you know, being suppressed by, you know, the government that has all of our information, you know, that can be used against us all the time. We don't want to live like this. And cultural nationalism does not help at all, because it's just isolating from other people in the struggle, instead of actually talking together and actually educating, agitating, and strategizing on how to fight against capitalist imperialism to tear it all down completely. And so, you know, once again, a cautionary tale that, you know, just because, you know, one person of a certain color is, you know, a lawyer or, you know, a mayor or a teacher, does not mean that the very vast majority of them, if not all of them, are in the interest of the liberation and the self-determination of not only African people, but Chicanos as well, Boricuas, Chinese people, the Ainu, Ryukyuan indigenous peoples of Japan, Koreans, you know, Palestinians, other people that, you know, just because one of their own is part of a larger, you know, supposedly revolutionary authority, that they have the interests of, you know, the people, and that's not true. Like the Palestinian National Authority for the Palestinian people, who are still suppressing Palestinian people under mass genocide as we speak, and using the police force to suppress the Palestinian masses in the concentration camps on their own land. So, you know, definitely keeping in mind that just because one person are on the top down, you know, that may come from one of us, does not mean that they're in our best interest of liberation and self-determination. So definitely keeping that in mind here, that, you know, these people do not have our best interest, in that, you know, they are just as guilty as the bigger common oppressor.
I think that's important that he highlighted that they literally had to be like, yo, Stokely, check your SNCC people, because our position on, you know, building coalition with white revolutionaries for them to do the work of undoing racism in the white community, we got that shit from you. Check your folks, you know, because like you'd think they would be listening to their own leadership about why that's an important facet, and not being like, oh wait, you work with white people, as if anybody is a fucking monolith, you know?
Right. Like, you know, and and that's the other thing, that just because, we're having some so-called white people come in and, do a coalition with us does not mean that, we're trying to quote unquote integrate, because integration is not about, trying to intermingle with different peoples. It's about making nice with your oppressor and integrating into the system of the oppressor, which are not poor European Americans, whom are not Chicanos, who are not Boricuas and other lumpen Africans. It's it's the capitalist imperialist ruling class and the people that support them, like the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the National Authority, the Irish bourgeoisie, all those people. It's about building that class solidarity among lumpen proletariat oppressed people, and not assimilating with the oppressor and thinking that we're doing something.
Well said.
It's not easy to organize the lumpets. Very hard, because they've been mistreated, they've been abused, they've been tortured, they've been lied to, by so many people, and including some of their own, So it's, they get caught up in situations, man, where they just don't have faith in anybody.
Right.
And when I went to prison, that's how I was. I didn't believe in anybody. I didn't believe, and it was hard for me at first to digest some of the literature that the 5%ers was giving me. It was hard for me,
Yeah.
but little by little, bits by bits, and after reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, it was another dimension that was opened up, But it's not easy for the lumpers, because lumpers they lived in the street. They come from the street, man. They're people, man, that have no hope in the system because there's no work for them. So the only way of surviving is to take to the streets, to sell drugs, to pimp, all that stuff. So it's not easy. Today the lumpers are a little bit much more open, than they were in the 50s and 60s.
Yes, indeed.
You just made Biggie lyrics pop in my head about how it's hard out here for a pimp trying to make the money for the rent.
Essentially.
You got it. Got it.
I'm glad I grew up on good music.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Not only for lumpers, for us too, man. We're trying to put money together to pay the rent.
Right. Like, it's fucking survival.
Yeah, survival by any means. That's how hip hop came out. Okay.
A lot of people don't realize that, if they haven't come from that kind of background, that sometimes we got to do what the fuck we got to do to get by. I got no shame in my game. I'll put it just like Bobby did there. They want to try to come after me for it now. Fucking let them try. I sold weed before it was legal. I did, because the fucking 2 jobs I was working while going through college wasn't enough to cover the fucking rent and having food and gas in the car and fucking insurance and all that other bullshit. And the only fucking way I could make ends meet was selling weed too.
Yeah,
It's like,
right. Like that's a part of trying to survive in the system that cares for no one. You know, like these two jobs, even with two, you could have two, three, four jobs, which is literally overload. Um, it's still never enough. It's still never enough because that's the whole point. That's literally the whole point. And so, you know, before you know it, your body is starting to break down. You're starting to psychologically lose it because capitalism surrounds us, so it's very easy to be mentally enslaved under the brunt of this system. And before you know it, you're discarded and you have nowhere to go because you're no longer physically exploitable to make more profit and product the for the ruling class. So it's kind of like it's not our fault that these things happen to us because it's not a personal failing. Because
right.
if it was a personal failing, then why in the hell do we why in the hell do we even have African children period at 10, 11 working now because they let go of those child labor law concessions now?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
It's fucked up. Kids should be able to have their fucking childhood, you know?
It's
Like,
childhood.
I mean, not gonna lie, at 11, 12 years old, I was taking jobs working under the table. But, I also had some choice in the matter about, what hours I would work and whatnot. And it was just to like have some pocket money, not because my family needed me to help pay the bills, which is the case with a lot of kids these days, is the kids are helping pay the household bills. Like it blows my fucking mind that they're rolling back these child labor protections where motherfuckers are out here trying to get children working in fucking factories and shit. And it's like, you kidding me? Like the under the table jobs I was working was like being a prep cook in a fucking
Yeah,
restaurant slash catering business, shit that wasn't gonna kill me.
yeah. And then that's a part of it. And that's why it completely needs to go because it destroys the mind and the spirit. And there's nothing sustainable about it, no matter how many concessions that you put on, it's still the same system. And so if all of it is not gone, then you're digging a bigger hole for not only yourself but for your people because you know this system has existed in modern form for 531 years to be exact. And the fact of the matter is this is not sustainable for anyone. Now, it did make some certain advancements that humanity does indeed need. However, it doesn't change the fact that it's an oppressive system. No matter what, there's no pussyfooting around that. So it needs to go because I mean, if children are the future, why the hell are they working?
Right? Why the fuck are they being exploited and shit as if they need to provide for their fucking existence at 12 years old? What the fuck? What the
Exactly.
fuck? This system is fucked. And a big part of the problem is, once again, these motherfuckers in Congress don't fucking represent us. They steadily vote themselves pay raises constantly, on top of them taking legalized bribery checks to pad their fucking wallet with and become millionaires while in office, but they have
I,
not raised the fucking minimum wage for the workers in almost 20 years, if I remember correctly, and it's still sitting at 725. Let me tell you, when I was working my ass off at those two jobs plus going to school full time and still needing to sell fucking weed to get by was 20 fucking years ago. Okay, 20 fucking years ago, and I was making $12.50 an hour plus commission. So my average pay was $19, $20 an hour then. And it wasn't enough to fucking survive on then. And they're
Yeah.
out here trying to get motherfuckers to take jobs for $7.25 a fucking hour still in some of these states. Get the fuck out of here. And the
Yeah.
best that some of these states have even done is like 15 an hour. Get the fuck out of here. 15 an hour wasn't enough when the fight for 15 started. It already hadn't been enough for many years.
It's
Going on
not.
a decade.
It's
Okay.
not enough.
If the minimum wage was actually keeping up with the cost of living and inflation and productivity, because mind you, while these wages have remained stagnant, productivity's gone through the fucking roof. If it kept up with those three factors, it would be around $64, $65 an hour at this fucking point for the minimum wage.
Yeah. Like, it's not enough. It'll never ever be enough. I don't know why we're still fighting for these concessions, knowing that they're raising the rent that we should even paying, period. Why they're raising the prices on our food, on our resources that came from the ground, which we came from. Why are we still fighting for these concessions, knowing that they're going to keep raising these numbers and decimals that we don't have?
Honey, because the shit libs are just as interested in keeping the masses dispossessed of any fucking ability to like have a home, have any fucking thing. They are just as fucking invested in it as any other capitalist. So of course they're gonna push for mediocre ass bullshit that doesn't even come close to helping.
It doesn't come close. And going back to what we read today, like cultural nationalism is not going to give us free housing. I am sorry, but that is not going to work because I'm sorry, but Afrocentrism and other kinds of ethnic fascism is not going to liberate the people and give us our food back, our clothes that actually fit and are actually comfortable, housing, adequate medical care, adequate sex education, because clearly they're not educating us on a damn thing. Other things that we as human beings need to move forward. You cannot use your culture alone to do that. It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. That's just fascism in a handbasket. The only difference is you're not a billionaire. So,
right.
Sorry.
It's like,
Sorry.
this is once again politically fucking impotent. Good job. Yep. Indeed. All right. Well, I'm looking at the clock and it is about that time. So we can wrap this up here and we will kick things back off next week with, give me a second to look at it, the section Breaking Down Our Doors. So, we'll see you all Friday for the second Rainbow Coalition reading group. We'll be diving into another section of Johnny Torres's book, Voices of the Revolution. So, looking forward to that.
Yep.
And have a fucking wonderful evening. I love you guys.
Love y'all.
All power to the people.
All power to the people.